Okay. Just briefly, okay, Solang and myself edited this book, Escape from the Lion's Paws. Basically, how it came about was, the late Tan Kui and friends launched the Fajar generation. We're all very excited and all that. And as things always happen, you always have all these makan sessions and all that kind of thing. So, and Jin Kui mentioned that he has actually met people who were elected as MPs in those days, but did not become MPs because they had to escape from arrest. And that was how the conversation started, that, how come this kind of things happen. And also at that time, the mass Selamat escape also happened during the same period. So one thing led to the other, and so the idea came about that, hey, if we have so many this kind of escape stories, we should actually try to find out who else escaped and wanted to share their stories. And that was how it came about. And of course, when we counted the number of people who escaped, we said, okay, who is contactable and who knows how to contact. And finally, we came to these few that were contactable, or we could reach them and all that. So a few of us were traveling either to London or Hong Kong, and via emails managed to contact some of these people and interviewed them, or by email, or met them personally, and that was how the stories came about. It was unfortunate that, or depending on how you look at it, that Francis Khoo actually rushed the whole text before he actually passed away. So in a way, we were very lucky, but unfortunate that he did not came, was not around to see when it's finally published. Okay. The second book is actually came about when we were commemorating the 25th anniversary of the operation, Spectrum operation, and it was updated. And Mr. G. Raman, who was then the lawyer defending Wah Piow at that time, kindly wrote the foreword. So it became quite interesting. So we are very happy that he's able to make it today to maybe share some of his insights of the situation then, and maybe we can do some analysis now. So we are very proud that he's able, even though he was not feeling well, and we were happy that he's recovered to come today. The second person that we will be inviting to be on the panel is Swanza. Okay. Swanza will give her own insights on the people that she has met and then the issues back then. And of course, our final member of the panel is Miss Chiu Solang, fellow director of Function A, who is also the editor for one of these. So can I invite the panel members to become? Swanza. Okay.
Are we all coming up?
Yeah.
Sure. Later than you.
Yes, why not? Hey, nobody's going to eat you up. Okay. Please sit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I'm feeling a bit shocked. Because I thought that I was going to read a passage from the book, which I thought was very interesting.
You can do that. You can do that.
Yeah, so in the book launch, you read a passage, So I thought, no problem, I'll read a passage. Now I'm supposed to provide insights.
Yes, right.
So I hope I don't disappoint you.
Yeah, okay.
But I suppose you can ask questions. Now, so I maybe talk about. I mean, when this book was published, I saw these faces and said, I know this one, and these two I don't really know so personally, but I know them. All right, and the thing about it is that I knew them, but they escaped. How did they escape? I don't know, and I never dared to ask. And wow, at last the book come out like that. I don't need to ask, I just read and I'm going to find out. So it was quite exciting for me to actually read this book. So I have, since I think Wah Piow's book is going to be mentioned afterwards, I decided that I will read about Juan Thai's. Now, how do I know Juan Thai? Not really. I remembered that I was in London in 81, 82, and I was supposed to come home, but I didn't. Against my brother's advice not to visit Tan Wah Piow, I visited him. And then he said, hey, why you go home? Why don't you just stay here and just do some magazine work? Then I said, hey, actually I'm interested in that. So why not? So I stayed to do it. The result of it was that I was helping to do this Hijab, which is a student publication. And I go to his office every morning. And in his office was this person, Juan Thai. I was introduced to him, oh, this is Juan Thai, hello, and that's it. He comes every morning to work. He's very quiet. He works very hard, very diligently. He sits in his office, the whole morning. Then lunchtime, he disappears. After lunch, he comes back, and then he goes home. And every day it's the same. So I never dare to ask him any questions, unless I'm seen as a spy. So at last, inside this book is his story, not just how he escaped, but his story, And I was quite moved by his story, about his childhood and all that, and his fight for against discrimination and for justice. Okay, maybe I'll read this part, a short extract. Now, I've reached the age when I must read without my glasses. Okay. Juan Thai. I will read a very short extract because I thought it was. In this particular case, he worked for the. He was a candidate for the Workers' Party with JBJ, and then maybe I start from here. He said, "I obtained a credit." Do I need this? No. Not really. Yeah.
No. Okay.
Loud enough. Throw my voice as a teacher. I obtained a credible 32.6% of the votes cast. That was after the election, 1976. But from the responses of the PAP, it was clear that they were trying to cast me as someone inciting racial unrest with racially inflammatory speeches. They came for me 2 days after the results of the general election. At that time, I was living in a village near Nanyang University in Jurong. I rented a room in the village because it was near to the construction site where I was working. To access the village, one had to first pass the main entrance of the university. The villagers were mostly farmers, and the village had chicken, tropical fish, and vegetable farms, and a lemon tree plantation. As a daily rated worker at a construction site, I would not get paid when it rained, as there would not be work. On the day the ISD came for me, it was raining, and I decided not to go to work. My feeling of something being amiss was aroused early in the morning when a neighbor came and told me of suspicious characters loitering at the gate. The ISD must have planned to nab me when I leave for work in the morning and was staking out for me. At about noontime, I was reading a book when I heard the sound of cars driving into the village compound. My first thought was that some vendors had come to deliver tropical fish, and I continued reading. Then I realized that ISD agents had surrounded the house and called out my name. Instinctively, I threw away my book and dashed for the back door. A man was waiting for me there, and he tried to grab me. I shoved him off and ran into the lemon tree plantation behind the house. My sudden turn put a little distance between me and my pursuer. Just as I reached the fence for the plantation, the officer pursuing me drew out his revolver and shouted in Hokkien, "If you run, I will fire." I shouted back, "If I die, so be it." After running zigzag in the midst of the plantation, I climbed over a fence, fell and sprained my right leg. I used my hands to crawl into the bushes next to the fence and out of sight of my pursuer. My national service training had come in useful. Lemon shrubs are full of sharp thorns, but they provide wood covers as they are leafy. Lying in the embrace of the bushes, I saw through the leaves the pursuing officer running past me towards the track leading to a neighboring house. I could see and hear the commotion of people searching the area. They went from door to door asking my neighbors if they had seen me. Then the sky opened up and a heavy downpour drenched the earth. A few hours later, the ISD agents called off the search. I could see their vehicles leave. By sunset, I had the comfort of the cover of darkness, but I did not dare to emerge from my hideout. While lying in the bushes, flashes of television confessions of people detained by the ISD appeared in my mind. I imagined that if I were taken in, I would be drugged and made to confess. I thought I would rather die than be humiliated in such a manner. I was determined not to be caught. Extract. Okay, that's done. How did he escape? Interesting. Very interesting.
Okay?
Yep.
Shall we get the second speaker first before we have the Q&A all together? Mr. Rahman?
Me?
Mm-hmm.
No problem.
The read, you said the read smoke screen first. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not seeing your thunder.
10-15 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, too long.
Sorry.
I just take 10 or 15 minutes. Rereading Smoke Screens and Mirrors in recent days cast my mind back to the 70s and the 80s. Lots of memories came in. In the 70s, I was just a young working adult. I was a legal assistant of Dr. G. Raman here. And there was a time when he was very, very busy. And that was a time when he was doing the case of Tan Wah Piow and 2 other workers from marine engineering. American Marine. Sometimes in the evening when I leave the office, I would see some students hanging around in the office. The office was, by the way, located just opposite the district and magistrate courts. And I think I saw Wah Piow, but I actually do not know him. And for a small firm to be involved in a 47-day trial is not a joke. So, of course, I couldn't be his legal assistant, wasting my time in the courts. But it so happened that one morning after the mentions in the courts, I happened to pass by the district court, and this bunch of students came up to me and said, "Would you mind going up? We can't get in. The court is so crowded. Take notes for us. We need to do a daily update to the students." And I said, "Okay, let me waste a bit of time." I went up and I sat at the bench, the bar table. Sam Sinatore, before I could even write one sentence, I think Sam Sinatore said, "That young lady over there, what are you doing?" And G. Raman immediately stood up. "Oh, she's my legal assistant taking notes for me." So I was saved. Yes. And I spent the morning listening to what the case was all about. But actually, I read, it was quite extensively reported in the Straits Times. But at that time, I think I never envisaged the extent of the case. That there was so much injustice in that case. I think I just knew, well, some problems with G. Raman and the clients in the court, and that was it. But when I reread this book, Smoke Screens and Mirrors, it just dawned on me that I think the erosion of the powers of the judiciary may have started from there, because the judge was getting himself involved in the whole trial and siding the prosecution all the way. And that was actually showing a terrible example to the judiciary. Incidentally, I think he was the first district judge. That means he was the top of the district judges. And if he had set that kind of example where there's so much injustice and everybody, including the students, could see, then something is really bad is really happening. And so at the end of the day, you know that Wah Piow was convicted. He was sent to jail. But before the session ended, actually this man, he's really something. He stood up and congratulated the judge for his promotion to the High Court. Well, that's Wah Piow for you. Now, this book actually contains a part that is very interesting. That's his first book that he published. Soon, I jumped over 10 years to 87. When 87 happened, Wah Piow was in England. I was in the cold room. And Wah Piow immediately, I think, set to work to rebut what the Singapore government said of the Marxist conspiracy. He's pretty remarkable because in 3 weeks, he actually finished Let the People Judge, which you can find in this book, SMOKESCREENS, from page 73 onwards. And I'm amazed that he was able to write so well, despite the fact that he was subjected to so much torture. First, he was deprived of his Singapore citizenship the day that we were arrested. And then he was made the leader of the Marxist Conspiracy, and he had to defend that on his own in England. And he still could write this book in 3 weeks. It's really amazing. If I had known that he was writing all this when I was in the cold room, I wouldn't have appeared on television. Unfortunately, ignorance is not that blissful. So in this book, actually, he also wrote about his thoughts on the politics of Singapore. And that was well before 87 happened. It's just that he didn't publish it. He confessed that he is actually a democratic socialist, not a communist. And it's very clear from his writings that he did not advocate communism. He's a socialist, and he did not advocate violence. And he was a friend, and he's still a friend, to some of the 22 who were arrested, but he did not direct us as to how we should behave in Singapore. To make him a law student at that time, the leader of the Marxist Conspiracy, is really an insult to all of us, as well as to him. It puzzles me actually why the government was so intent on getting him. He had left Singapore in 1975-76, and yet in 87 he was made the leader of this so-called Marxist conspiracy. What was it that makes the government so nervous that they have to run after him after 10 years? If you read the book, you'll know why. I think he's a very intelligent person. He's so political that if he were in Singapore, I don't think the PAP MPs have a chance. But if he were in Singapore, I'm very sure that he will be arrested under the Internal Security Act. When I was in detention, I was telling the ISD officers that they were very mean to Wah Piow, that he was just a student when they hounded him out of Singapore. And they used to laugh and said, well, you don't know what he is. But reading the book, I can understand why he's such a threat to the PAP. Now, jumping to the second book that he wrote, Smokescreens and Mirrors. Actually, he didn't intend to write this book, this Smokescreens and Mirrors, but when we asked him to update his Let the People Judge, he came up with Smokescreens and Mirrors, and when I read it, I was actually amazed that he was able to analyze the Marxist conspiracy in a way that no other writers had done. He analyzed it in a legal way because he should have practiced law for maybe over 10 years by that time. No, maybe 20 years, 25 years, maybe 25 years. And he analyzed it in such a way that I didn't see in that light. And then his title, Smokescreens and Mirrors, is just so apt. Let me read to you a passage. This passage is at page 24. The moment Operation Spectrum was launched, the stage was set as in a magician's parlor with smoke screens and mirrors. Navigating through the maze to discover the truth is a daunting task for anyone. As in a circus, the magician would point his wand relentlessly at the illuminated screen with the flashing words Marxist Conspiracy interposed with images of social strife in bygone years, leading, if not pushing, the untrained mind to accept the propaganda as gospel truth. For ordinary members of the public, inundated with wall-to-wall propaganda in the print, audio, and visual media, and without the time, resources, and discipline to reflect on and analyze this information, it was difficult to separate the wheat from the chaff. I actually was very, very impressed with this passage because if he had sat down to analyze the documents supporting the government side of the story, and he made it clear that the government had published a press release 41 pages long. They didn't publish it in one go. They published it embargoed daily. And can you imagine that the public is inundated with so much information about the Marxist conspiracy at that time? I don't think anybody can see the truth behind what the government had alleged. And that is precisely the smoke screens that blurred everybody's vision out. So nobody had any time to analyze the facts. Wah Piow analyzed it in a very short sentence, and this is what he said. He said, all the allegations were based on two key words, conspiracy and Marxist. Just these two key words. What is a conspiracy? With his legal training, he analyzed that if you say some people are in a conspiracy, then there must be a wrong that they intend to commit. For instance, if a group of people conspire to rob the bank, then it is robbery, and robbery itself is a crime under the penal code, and that you can call a conspiracy. But in the Marxist conspiracy, where is the conspiracy? And here is where I'm impressed again that he was able to quote examples. And let me here refer you to the example of Vincent Cheng. He said, the central plank of the allegations against Vincent was that in religious field, Vincent Cheng has distorted religious doctrines to suit communist cause. This allegation is extraordinary because no one has the monopoly to the interpretation of religious doctrines, let alone the government of Singapore. Not only was he so clear in his mind that this is not a conspiracy, he cited the Constitution, where our Singapore Constitution allows the freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and the freedom to practice one's religion. So I've dealt with this conspiracy part. About the Marxists, he said he nailed it he nailed it by saying that Marxism itself, there's nothing illegal about Marxism. You can be a believer of Marxism, so what? So how can the government call us Marxists and say that we are wrong and that they are entitled to lock us up under the Internal Security Act? That is definitely a wrong, an unjustified act on the part of the government. So Wah Piow has just nailed it in just these two words. And I would say that he's such a clear-headed person. He's such a good lawyer that he's able to concisely nail the Marxist conspiracy in just these few terms. And so I hope all of you will buy this book at the end of the day. Thank you. Raman, would you like to come up?
Yeah, sure.
Raman, as I had just said, was my boss when I started practice. And then he was himself detained in 1977. And then later on in 1987, I was myself detained. So I don't know. So we are ready to start to answer any questions that you all may want to ask. Would you say a few words? Okay.
If I start talking, there will be no end, Because my interaction with people who belong to a certain political spectrum extends over a number of years. You can say right from the inception of the PAP, 1954, I was a 16-year-old student at that time in RI. And we followed Lee Kuan Yew. Lee Kuan Yew was our hero at that time. Because what he spoke, the language he spoke then, is extremely opposite to what he speaks now. He was for the workers, he was for the people, the ordinary people. And if you recall, those of you a little older than the average number of people here, he said once, your tears are my tears, your joys are my joys. He was telling them he was going to share whatever problems that the people had. But what has happened to his tears? What has happened to his joys? His tears have become the joy of a few of us, not everybody. And his joys have become tears for every one of us. That's a sad indictment of the man and his party. That's way back in 1954 when we used to cycle all the way to Tanjong Pagar. And friends who came with me were Tan Jin Kui. Jody is not here today, I think. So we had this political mind. We wanted to see colonialism wiped out from Singapore. That was what PAP was standing for. They also had one of their planks, their political planks, the merger of Singapore with Malaya. There was no Malaysia then. There was so much of enthusiasm. There was so much of interest engendered among the students, among the people of Singapore for the future. And Lee Kuan Yew was our champion, our hero. And he spoke in a language which inspired every one of us. That attitude of mind in the man, you can say, lasted from 1954, after the inception of the party, to 1959, 1960. When he assumed power in 1959, Singapore got self-government. He spoke a different language. He was still attending concerts held at the City Hall steps. He would sit on the roadside. I don't know whether you remember this, Aneka Ragam Rayat, how the cultures of the different races in Singapore can be melded together. Aneka Ragam means different sounds of the people. He started, first show was at Botanic Gardens, second show at City Hall steps. Lee Kuan Yew himself sitting cross-legged on the pavement along St. Andrews Road. That was the beginning. So I was a keen follower of the political scene, you can say. And of course, I had people like Jin Kui, Jody and others who were politically interested. We had a friend in the same class, Aravindan Balakrishnan, who is now settled in England. And 1957 came along before the PAP elections in 1959. The 1957 elections were for the city council membership. Members of city council were elected by popular vote. First time that was being done. And the Progressive Party at that time had prepared one of their stalwarts, A.P. Raja, to be the mayor of Singapore. City council elections means you elect a mayor. Now we have pockets of PAP parliamentarians who are calling themselves mayors of a constituency or a group constituency, a group of constituencies. Ong Eng Wan was elected as mayor of Singapore with Ong Pang Boon being the deputy mayor. And you won't believe this, the Progressive Party was so confident that they will win, they even ordered a gold mace as the symbol of office of the mayor. And who presented this gold mace? The late Loh Kwan Toh. And who was destined to be the mayor? A.P. Raja. Why? He had gone all the way to London to train how to be a mayor, But the people's sentiments were different. When the first city council meeting was held in the city hall chamber, the first thing that Ong Eng Wan did was to send the gold mace to the museum. It had no place. He called it the symbol of colonialism. Now that was a background in which PAP came in. It won the hearts of the people. And if you remember the 1959 elections, out of 51, PAP captured 43. The 8 went to the Progressive Party and I think UMNO at that time, I'm not sure. So that is tracing history. And then came the split within the PAP when Ong Eng Wan led a particular faction, Lee Kuan Yew the other faction. And who almost won the leadership of the PAP during the tussle, during the conflict between Lee Kuan Yew and Ong Eng Wan. Ong Eng Wan almost won, if not, they drew. As far as votes went, Ong Eng Wan and Lee Kuan Yew scored the same. Toh Chin Chai came to the help of Lee Kuan Yew. As chairman of the party, he cast his casting vote. And that is how Lee Kuan Yew survived his political elimination. I can use a neutral word. Then came the differences between the left wing of the PAP and the reactionary forces of the PAP. Led by who? Led by Lee Kuan Yew himself. And you had a man like S. Rajaratnam who was their Dr. Goebbels. He was a propaganda chief. Those of you who remember German history. He was the director of the propaganda organization within PAP. He's the one who wrote the great speeches. Always smiling, but he had within him the makings of a real political Machiavellian person. I mean, he was very Machiavellian. Although he postured himself as a liberal socialist. Lee Kuan Yew postured himself as a Fabian socialist once upon a time. Socialists always stand for basic rights and human rights. All these were just irrelevant stuff, as history has shown us today. When the talk about merger came, Malaya and Singapore uniting together, with Sabah and Sarawak being brought in. And once Brunei was also in the offing, as it were, to join the Greater Federation of Malaysia. But then some splits took place. Thanks to the British, they wanted to keep Brunei as an enclave because there was a lot of oil from Brunei. So they would lose a lot of foreign exchange. Once upon a time, I don't know whether you will believe what I say, Malaya was the major foreign exchange earner for Britain. Why? Because Malaya was the largest rubber producing nation. Alright. There's a lot of history to talk about. Then came the merger and how the split arose between the left wing, led by Lim Chin Siong, and the reactionary forces led by Lee Kuan Yew. If you want to put across your point of view in politics, you persuade people. You combat with your opponents fairly. You challenge point by point. But Machiavellians don't believe in reasoning and in logic. They use the iron fist. And that's how the leadership of the left wing was crippled. The 1963 February arrests, more than 100 people of the left wing, the Barisan, were detained. And that almost brought the party to a standstill. But you still had stalwarts like Chia Tai Po, who was not detained in this February 63 arrest. He was detained subsequently, later in the year. So that then began the gradual slaughtering of all left-wing forces in Singapore. We had a man like Dr. Lee Siew Choh who meant well. He was a humanitarian, socialist to a certain extent. But he didn't have that kind of fire, that kind of analytical approach that people like Chin Seong had, people like Dr. Lim had, Dr. Lim Hock Siew, or Dr. Po Su Kai had. So as a result, the party lost support. The leadership was gone. How on earth do you carry on a movement or a struggle with the leadership being neutralized? Now, I had the good fortune of knowing quite a number of activists from the left. Not very closely, but I knew them and I represented some of them in certain court matters or making legal representations. That's my involvement. So when I was detained in 1977, the word went out, and this was the banner headline in Straits Times. G. Raman, Euro-communist, a creature hitherto unknown, Euro-communist, detained. And then I was branded as a successor to the leadership of the left in Singapore. Successor to who? Dr. Po. Dr. Po never proclaimed himself as a leader. He's a very humble man, very sharp mind. But he didn't have this posturing. I am the leader. No. And how did I become deputy to Dr. Po? So they had to create a scenario in which I am portrayed as a dangerous fellow. And then they got me to say that I crossed the Straits of Johor and went to Masai with a Changi bomber. The bomber man who was bringing a bomb in a car. And now the bomb went off. And then he was taken across the Straits of Johor with Dr. Po Su Kai and myself. It's absolute trash. This was February 1977 when I was detained. And the story came out that this is what G. Raman was up to. And therefore, he's a dangerous man, a dangerous criminal. But in June of that year, Ho Si Beng was PAP Member of Parliament, a reasonable guy. He raised a question in Parliament. Hey, G. Raman has confessed to what he has done. He has appeared over television. This is part of the torture that you undergo. These are days of shame for people like me. We don't want to appear on television. We don't want to confess to things which we never did. But as a price we have to pay, I'll come to that maybe on another occasion altogether. So, I was lumped together with these people and I was talking about Ho Si Beng raising this question in Parliament. Why is Raman still being detained when he has already admitted to his wrongs and has appeared over TV? The answer by Chua Sian Chin, who was the Home Minister at that time, was Raman has retracted his statements on the crossing of the Straits of Johor. Therefore, he is being interrogated further. After they got all those great earth-shaking statements from me, I was dumped into solitary confinement. I was all alone in a single room. There was no further interrogation. They still kept me in solitary. No access to family or friends except the periodic visit by the family. That was denied for the first 2 months. So that's how the events unfolded. They knew that I was not involved. If only they knew. You see, unfortunately or fortunately, my passport had a date stamped on it by the immigration showing that I had crossed the causeway on that particular evening when the so-called Changi bomber was making his way to explode a bomb. But if they had enough intelligence, they should have investigated. You know why? My wife's and my daughter's passport also showed that they had crossed the causeway. Time not mentioned. In fact, we were on our way to Malacca at that time. It was in the midst of the Tan Wah Piow trial. And we had booked a holiday at Fraser's. Sinnathurai wouldn't allow a break in the hearing. So since I had promised a break for the family, we drove to Malaysia. And the other objective of crossing the causeway was for me to serve subpoenas are summonses to witnesses, on Tsui Hon Kwong, who was one of those activists in the Students' Union, and Juliet Chin. Juliet Chin was a Malaysian. She was banished. Tsui Hon Kwong was from Hong Kong. He was banished from Singapore. So I had to serve these summonses on them so that they could turn up as witnesses at Tan Wah Piow's trial. So this is the truth. And the government, the PAP knew it, the ISD knew it. But I won't tell you the truth. Why? They had to paint a picture, a scenario, you see. Even before so long, or Chauncey were detained, they had already painted the scenario. This is what we should make them do. So create this great bogey about Marxist conspiracy. A man who is 8,000 miles away is pulling strings from there. Must be very long strings, all the way 8,000 miles. Now that's roughly what I have to say. I covered a whole range of events. When Solang asked me to come back today, I thought, hey, I'll attend the book launch, that's all. And subsequently she said, hey, Howard sitting on the panel as a panel member. I said, if you want me to, I don't mind. So I was prepared to field questions, answer questions that you may have.
Until Christine asked you to speak.
That was Christine, was it?
I just want to know, like, why would the government want to go to all that trouble for a bunch of harmless...
innocent people, yeah.
Because Spencer was my classmate. Me, we were painting in preview and all that. Why was the government doing all this smoke screen from your lawyerly analytical mind? How do you see it now with the wisdom of hindsight?
You don't need much wisdom, to see the sheer. What wisdom? See the sheer repression. They are destroying anybody who can stand up against them. It's simple. What does Solang do?
So we're talking about insecurity.
Complete insecurity. The man is an insecure man. You know the story, once he was traveling in his car and the exhaust gave some false blast, he went straight down onto the floor of the car. He thought somebody was shooting at him. That's how insecure he is.
Coward.
Cowards, yes. Bullies are cowards first. They're not heroes. And whenever he goes out on his visits, how many vehicles accompany him? Once I had the misfortune of having to host him well before 1977. I was president of the Singapore Kerala Association. He was a guest of honor. He never accepted the invitation of the Kerala Association previously to be a guest. Unfortunately, during my time when I was president, he accepted. And then, he sweats profusely. So next to the dressing room of the artists, there was a toilet, a convenience place. The whole thing was locked. The artists couldn't use it. So I asked the guy who was looking, there was a guard posted. Why have you closed it? Oh, big man is coming, so he needs it. But why do you need a whole toilet for that? He said he sweats a lot, he has to change. And he said every time he leaves the Istana, there are 500 police personnel on guard along the route. So where is your taxpayers' money going? So that's a man. He's insecure completely. He's insecure today. He still has got this whole panoply of security guards accompanying him. If you look at the picture in the papers that you see, 2-3 fellas with this kind of ribbon hanging from their neck, their security passes. They are the bodyguards. The man who sat on the pavement in front of City Hall steps, way back, 56, 57, he's suddenly a different man. Sorry if I wandered away. Sorry. Christian, I hope I want. Okay.
Any other question? Comments? All happy? Shall we have a tea break?
No, I think, Mr. Raman, if you want to look at the man himself,
yes,
you must look at the way he succeeded.
Yes.
He succeeded fighting for the support workers' union.
Yes.
So in my opinion, when people like Francis became activists, he saw himself
Yes.
in Francis,
Shoes.
fighting for the underdog.
Fine.
So I believe he doesn't want to see a revival
Yeah, absolutely.
or a look-alike as a challenge against him.
Right.
Okay. If you look at Solang's case, now in the case of Wah Piow, I don't think he did it for any other reason but you must also see Mrs. Lee behind. Mrs. Lee has always wanted the son to succeed him. So in his elimination of Wah Piow, I think he was also leveling the competition. So the man becoming a father soon began to realize that the son on his ministerial pay could not afford bungalow.
Yes.
So he revised ministerial pay so that the son and his cohort could afford it.
Yeah.
So if you want to analyze smoke screens and mirrors, you have to understand the psyche of this guy as to why he goes after those that he sees as threatening. Okay. And if you go to the YouTube and you see the former Solicitor General talking about it, he talks about Mrs. Lee in not very affectionate terms.
Okay.
So I put that to you that those people who are caught up together with Wah Piow like yourself,
Yeah.
I'm afraid it's just collateral damage.
Well, collateral damage. Sorry, I am with you all the way. The analysis that you have made is absolutely 100%.
But the story is not over until the Fat 86.
Story won't be over. The story is still being enacted. Let me deal with Lee Kuan Yew's antipathy towards people who challenge his authority. He won't stomach reason, arguments, reason, debate. He just eliminates you. It has happened in his own cabinet, It's not just outside, not the left wing opposing him. It's his own activists, his own colleagues within the cabinet. If you read the book by Kevin Tan, Lee's Lieutenants, there is one portrayal of Kenny Byrne, K.M. Byrne, who was Minister for Labour. The time came for votes to be cast. I was telling you about who's going to be Prime Minister in the country. You know who Kenny Byrne voted for? He voted for Ong Kwan. You wouldn't expect this because he belongs to the same background, the same class affiliation as Lee Kuan Yew would be. Cambridge, Lee Kuan Yew. Kenny Byrne, Oxford. What would he want to do with this rabble-rouser called Ong Kwan? With due respect to him. He was a rabble-rouser, first-class speaker in Hokkien. As good as Lim Chin Siong. And what happened to Kenny Byrne? What was his fate? He was booted out of here. He became Singapore's ambassador to Australia. Being sent off as ambassador is no great compliment to anybody. Only if you're not wanted in your country are you sent off as ambassadors. Except maybe key appointments. Once he was asked, how come Singapore doesn't have diplomatic representations overseas in so many countries? You know what his answer was? I don't have too many idiots available to be sent off. Any ambassadors here in the audience? That was his answer. Now, it gives you my response to Lee Kuan Yew trying to eliminate people like Francis Yao. He can see the man. Francis is a great communicator as far as English is concerned. He knew there was a threat. When the time came to appoint an NCMP, and his party had appointed him to be NCMP, Parliament never convened for months on end after general elections. Questions were raised, hey, why can't the meeting? Francis Chow should represent Workers' Party. His answer was, there's not enough space, we need an extra chair. So Parliament is being renovated. Hi. What kind of backside does Francis Chow have to use a chair? Sorry, I'm being a little coarse. That's a question that emerges.
But you see, Mr. Raman, there are a lot of untold stories
Yes.
That have not been highlighted.
Yes.
The speech that Bill Clinton gave at
Yes.
the Democratic National Convention
Yes.
is one of Bill Clinton as a consummate politician.
Yes.
So if you look at Francis Chow in the times when he stood for election, he had a natural gift
Yes.
and flair to be able not only to speak proper English but to communicate with the man in the street.
Right.
And the real story about Francis Chow was his running to be the president of the Automobile Association of Singapore. I don't know whether many people in this room are actually aware of the dirty tricks that were
perpetrated.
perpetrated
Yes.
in order to prevent Mr. Xiao become
President.
head of that organization. And I believe he used a lot of the intelligence services to, as his son would say, fix it.
Yeah. Right.
So one of these days, Solan should write a book about the fixers and the cleaners.
Why not?
Any more questions? Okay, let's try to ask
from what has been said earlier, that the comment that there remain many untold stories. I'd like to address this question, Mr. Raman, and what you said about Tan Wah Piow. And since you were his lawyer, and you mentioned that about the insecurity of Mr. Lee, and that, if I heard you correctly, Tan Wah Piow was perceived as a potential threat to the possibility of the eventuality of the succession of his own son.
Right.
Am I right? Now, I was at the university when all this happened as a young lecturer. I've heard Juliet Chin, but I've never heard Tan Wah Piow. I haven't read the book and all that. Was he really that threat? Because this raises the other question about untold stories.
Yeah.
Is why would someone as powerful as Mr. Lee had become see what seems to be, collateral damage, minnows, I would say, as threats to Singapore, and use such draconian measures as putting them behind bars, shutting down, and in a way creating resentment among the population, fear. Maybe somebody may say fear was the purpose. Can you tell us something about Wah Piow? Do you think he like Lim Chin Siong was of the same caliber and a possible threat, and he could take over the leadership of Singapore? And what, supposing Mr. Lee had not exerted his will and the left wing had come into power, what kind of Singapore would you have seen today?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, there are two questions you've asked me.
Yes.
One is whether Wah Piow was really a threat
Yes.
to Lee Kuan Yew, whether given time to develop himself, that he would one day be a challenger.
It could be changed, right? Because as president of the union who was engaged in, and I was active in the union before that, and engaged in these activities, how could he be seen in that's why I said a lot of untold stories. I don't know what is really until, the archives are open. That why would he seem to be a threat and the power of the state thrown behind, there was a lot of publicity to the extent that there were other powers that must have enabled him to enter Britain.
Yeah.
Right? So he really had powerful supporters in that case, because how could he, without passport, have entered Britain, for instance? These questions have raised. So that's why I suggest that was he that major figure?
You raised three. Okay.
The other question is that therefore Mr. Lee is really paranoid, insecure.
You've chosen the right word to describe the man.
I'm just saying that the argument seems to be this, and did Wah Piow justify this kind of attention?
You have to trace Wah Piow's involvement with what they would say is politics. What did he do? he was active in the Jurong Industrial Mission, which the Catholic Church set up to help workers who were retrenched. And what happened to the workers there? Did the PIEU, Pioneer Industries Employees Union, or SILO, Singapore Industrial Labour Organization, which were the two omnibus unions which were looking after workers in Singapore, did they go to their aid? They did not, In fact, the trade union leadership of NTUC was colluding with the men who were running American Marine. How were they colluding? The Employment Act requires every worker's wages to be paid in cash. American Marine claimed that they did not have enough money to distribute to workers as a salary. NTUC then issued vouchers to the workers so that they could go to the nearest fair price and buy their rice and their oil, whatever. Was that championing the workers' interests or not? Was American Marine really bankrupt for them not to be able to help the workers? That was what Wah Piow and his colleagues were involved in. They carried out, they set up an industrial research outfit. That's all that Wah Piow did. And in the campus, he became the leader because the students elected him as their leader. Lee Kuan Yew saw a threat in this because that's how he also ascended to power. When he came back from England and when he knew that in order to be a politician, to be the leader of the country, he had to win over the workers. He championed, the first case that he did for workers was championing the Singapore Telecoms Workers Union rights, demands for fair salary. There was a big strike. Then he went on to how about union. So he was building his base. Now he felt, Wah Piow was also trying to build a base. I can't say that I've explored the psyche of Tan Wah Piow. I'm no psychiatrist. I've known him firstly as a client, subsequently as a friend. He's just like you and me, interested in fair play, getting your basic rights recognized. That's all he did. And if American Marine was doing something wrong and he felt that the trade union hierarchy or the oligarchy was supporting the bosses of American Marine, he had every right to object. The case that was brought against him is a trumped-up case. I hope you can read my foreword. I've explained why the whole trial was a miscarriage of justice. So that's one aspect. If I may answer the first question that you raised, what kind of man Wah Piow was? He was a man who just wanted to do good. Second question you raised was about neutralizing Wah Piow so that his son, Lee Kuan Yew's son, can ascend to power without any threat from any quarter.
Eliminating him.
Sorry?
Eliminating him as a threat.
Eliminating any threat that was posed to the succession. I would say it was definitely aimed at that issue, that the son comes in without any challenger. And you got to look at the son's psyche as at that time. He was a very self-interested man, young man, I don't know, this is anecdotal evidence. He wanted air conditioning to be installed in his unit in the army when he was undergoing reservist, when he was undergoing national service. And he wanted the comforts of life. Now LKY, of course, came to the aid of the unit or company commander and said that, look, everybody is undergoing the same type of experience, you have to go through it. So I would say in that sense, the young Lee Hsien Loong was a spoiled young man. He wanted his basic comforts. But despite that, Lee Kuan Yew publicly would stand up for equal treatment for all. And another anecdote that I want to discuss with you is a visit that the father and the son made to Brunei once. And I think one of the journalists who accompanied him was a man called Peter Lim, who was editor of Straits Times at the Material Time. And I don't know whether you know the story about the father and son going to the firing range and then asking, hey, take a shot at that particular target, the model. It was a human being, you see. Lee Kuan Yew, lucky for him, managed to hit not the bullseye, but somewhere on the target. Lee Hsien Loong did. He fired below the target, on the brick wall. So that's as far as his marksmanship is concerned. And at this passing out parade also, you may have heard this story, he fainted and fell. How does he become a leader when you don't have these basic physical qualities about you? I know that cable car tragedy that took place, he was in charge of operations. He took 8 hours to decide how many?
13 hours.
I stand corrected. 13 hours to decide what kind of operation to mount to rescue the people there. So is he suitable material for leadership? Of course, as of now, the image that Lee Hsien Loong is projecting is very different from what it was pre-May 2011. Pre-May 2011, he was still tough. He once mentioned about foreign journalists coming and interfering in local politics, making comments. I say the world is borderless now, man. Anybody can comment on your politics, the way you run your country. He said, we will deal with them. We will sweat them like we sweat flies. Is that the language of maturity? You tell me. It isn't. And therefore he had to make the environment suitable for the son so he can become an unchallenged leader. Your last point was also something related. Sorry, I've forgotten the last one. What was it?
I've been so amazed by your story.
Sorry?
You must see somebody that somebody can help you.
Oh no, the point I made was because it seems to be pop psychology as to one use paranoia and all that. Just playing devil's advocate, right? And that did he really pose such a threat? That's all. And I said, was he so important? And it does suggest he must have been important for him to get into Britain without a passport, right?
Oh yeah.
So I'm suggesting that who is Tan Wah Piow, in other words?
Yeah.
Yeah, and if anybody was talking well, I would suspect you will.
Actually, this part is answered in the book.
In the book, you read that book. Smokescreens and Mirrors.
Yeah, that's why I said I haven't read the book, but since you're here,
You have to buy the book.
I have.
Did you go to any of Wah Piaw's rally?
Did he hold any rallies?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
On campus.
One of the
No, because by that time I was a staff member, I wasn't here,
but
and
it's
we
not
don't get
only
announcements on that.
restricted to students.
I think so. So
Members can
it is
also-
not circulated. I heard Juliet Tin because she very bravely marched into a conference that was organized by the University Staff Association. You all might be interested in this anecdote, which gives the impression that many of us had that the student union leaders were actually basically do-gooders, youthful idealism. She waited till Mr. S. Rajaratnam, who was a guest of honor, and interestingly and fittingly, appropriately, the conference was on Singapore and modernization. Right? The seminar papers were eventually published under this title. And she waited till he was about to arrive. So she and 3 of the, I believe, committee members, sort of marched in, was quite brave in front of all the lecturers, assembled in this huge, and then made her speech on injustice and government policies and so on. Then at that time, Mr. S. Rajaratnam was about to enter.
Without
and
music.
They turned to him and said, what shall we do about this? Shall we ask her to leave? And my esteem for him went up, and he said, no, let the girl have the say. So she finished her speech, defiantly, raised her arm and said something or other, and she marched out, And everybody was stunned. I was expecting people to applaud, but nobody did. And then Mr. Rajaratnam came in and made some comment, and we proceeded as if it had not happened.
I see.
But what was the speech about?
I cannot recall because all I can recall is about oppression of workers. The thing that we did know that they were going out. If one wants to put the case, that it's not the union's student, it's not the part of the union activity of we to be going down to support workers, in the workers' grievances and so on. So I do not know under what banner they went in, because the union has many committees. It could be the social welfare committee, because the union's constitution deals with student union matters. And so the union has always, through its, in Singapore undergrad, the newspaper, and all that, written critical articles in their own right and have occasionally on campus had demonstrations. But what they did was something quite new, quite unprecedented that the union did, in that they actually went down to factory floors, acted, we thought, idealistically. You know how young people, when we were young too once, idealistically about what they felt was unfair working conditions. And I think idealistically some of them spent their vacation also working as factory workers in order to experience at first hand and be able to more convincingly be able to protest on the basis of experience that the conditions were harsh, they were underpaid, and therefore I think they might have encouraged or been part of strikes and protests. So I think it was on those grounds, as we understood it, because we weren't there, we can only rely on newspaper reports, that they were all arrested,
I'd like to add one anecdote.
Yeah, you might want to. I wasn't there. This is just my memory.
Maybe answer many of our doubts whether these people who were taken in deserve to be taken in.
Yeah.
This is back in 1988. I was with Press Holdings doing the in-house journal.
Right.
And at the time, Mr. Lim Kim San went in as the executive chairman.
Yes.
So in the first interview with him to write up for the company newsletter, I asked him all the corporate questions. At the end, I said, "Can I ask you a question, Mr. Lim, outside of this interview?" Remember, this is 1988. And he said, "Go ahead." I said, "Mr. Lim, what percentage of a cohort is the government prepared to sacrifice?" I asked exactly these words. I had no preamble. He could give me an answer. He said 15%.
No.
So that tells me that many of these so-called arrests and trumped up charges, they are really trumped up. They just wanted to scare you. Set an example. Don't behave that way. So whatever they did or didn't do, if the government wanted to, these people would have been coloured and brought in, like the Solang, the Wah Piows, and further back, Mr. Rahman and so on.
So you're saying that he had a number in response to your question that being the magician, he could pull 15 rabbits out of the hat and make sashimi out of it.
That's how I read it.
That's very interesting.
Actually, if you buy smoke screens,
Sorry,
if you buy smoke screens, the students at that time, Wah Piow's time, were very, very unfairly treated. Raman just said that he went to Malaysia to serve subpoena for the rioting trial. These were Malaysian students, bright students, and the minute Wah Piow's trial started, the ISD moved in and deported all of them. Tsui Hon Kwong hid under the table and managed to escape, but he himself also had to run. They were simply deported because they were foreign students, and they were that there's probably a term that they should not be interfering in domestic Singapore politics. So they were deported. Some of them final year students. They didn't finish their studies. It's tragic, and they were not given the right to be heard. How could we do this to students? It's very, very harsh. So as a result, all these students like Juliet had to start all over again in Europe. And fortunately, they were helped by friends. If not, then there would be nobody today. But they do have a profession today.
Was there a real fear that all this activity was
Can I just add to what?
That it was destabilizing, so any potential threat to the instability that might cause fears to investors and all that, was that a real fear or was that again paranoia?
It's paranoia. I used to have arguments with the ISD officer. I said, look, Wah Piow was just a student. Why did you all take such harsh measure to arrest him, to charge him, and then later on he had to run away?
This is my question too. Was he so important?
No, then they didn't. They said nothing. Then I said, look, I myself, I'm not an activist. Why do you take me in? Then after that, I said, look, you have all overestimated me, you know. I cannot be a threat to my own country. Why don't you just let me off? They never answer. Then when it comes to the question of what is the ISD's role, should it be independent of the government? They said the ISD is the government is the ISD.
Who said that?
The officers, the senior officers, tell me that. They have aligned themselves to the government. So where is the separation of what is executive and what is they should be doing their professional job, looking at national security, but they are not. So to answer your question, we may not be a threat, but they think that these people must be removed. Collateral damage again.
No, sorry to use that word, Sola. I don't mean it in that way.
It's okay.
No, really. I think the element which I want to explore, it's very real when you're fighting insurgency, okay, especially communist insurgency. And this is a man who has negotiated the open front communist unionists. They go to 4 o'clock and they wait until you really your resistance at the lowest level. And more importantly, I think he has learned the primeval motivation of fear. Okay, the 15% of the cohort that is expendable is meant for the other 85%. Okay, so if I can take away 15%, the other 85% will be domiciled, domesticated, truncated, lobotomized, and they'll be very deployed. And when they say "kichu," so this is the thing that we have to understand. So those 15% that has been, shall we say, plastered off, okay, we ought to respect them, like you say, and not waste the price that they pay. See, because fear is the most insidious of anybody's psyche. Because if you fear, you do nothing.
I'd like to add a few words about Tan Wah Piow. Wah Piow, after finishing his 3rd year in architecture, second year, he took leave of 1 year to join us actually in Jurong, where we were having actually the community organization project called the Jurong Industrial Mission. I was part of the staff there, and his present wife, his wife today, Sylvain Lan, was at that time actually the director of the project. So there were 4 of us actually in the organization. That was the staff workers, who were supposed to be community organizers with the project actually in Jurong. So he took 1 year's leave. That was I think 1973, in order, as he told us, to have a better understanding actually of the grassroots actually in Singapore. Because as he was telling us that while studying actually architecture is not actually just meant to be building prestigious buildings actually for the elite. He wanted to understand actually the needs of the grassroots, so mainly the working class actually people actually in Jurong, and then actually to think about what should be architecture actually from their point of view. So when he was in Jurong, I brought him along actually to visit mainly the workers who were there. Most of them actually were young Malaysian boys and girls. Because I was having a lot of problems with language, I couldn't speak Mandarin, and he was good in Mandarin. So both of us actually would be visiting the workers' flats actually during the evening. So from there actually he got a better understanding actually of what actually the working conditions actually of the lower class work. Then he was actually helping us, the group of us actually, to think actually beyond plain visiting the workers. Our job actually was to meet the workers, find out the issue, help them to get organized. So very often actually he would ask us actually to stop, let's sit down and think actually, why are you doing all this? Why are you just going around meeting workers and all that? Do you have any objective of what you actually would like to see change actually? You see injustices, one by one, specific injustices. But are you thinking actually further of what actually can be done to effect change? Which means actually that he was actually trying to help us, activists actually, to think about political change. So in a way, I would credit him actually with this ability to have the aspect actually of politics actually in activism. So that was actually in 1973. At the end of 1973, our whole project was closed down by the government. So all of us actually had no job to do. So he went back to university, and then, as history shows, he got into the Students' Union, and then they actually had a project actually that was meant to help actually the workers actually of Europe. So that's how actually after that he got arrested and all that, and trial. After he escaped actually to London, I had no contact with him. But when I was arrested, I was shocked actually to find out that they linked me to him and made me the leader. When actually I had no contact with him at all from the time actually he left when he escaped actually to London. In fact, I think Wah Piow was not very happy with me for not wanting to get involved in party politics. He was always wanting to know why am I getting involved in working with workers and also in the church. Why am I not moving out from that circle and going actually into party politics? So when they tried to link me up to him, I was actually asking the ISD, why are they doing that? So they said, in 1981, you went up to London to meet him. And how did they find out? I got a diary. So when they raided my place, they took my diary and they found that I had recorded actually a trip that I made to London, and I met Wah Piow. Yeah, it was true. Because I went to London, I was on the way actually to Europe to raise money actually for Catholic project actually here in Singapore. So on the way when I was going to Europe, of course the plane had stopped in London, so I told him actually, can I come and see you after so many years I haven't seen you, Yeah, so I spent about 2 or 3 days with him, and most of the time we were going to the theatres to watch shows and all that.
Marxist thing.
No, we're going to see Annie. And we didn't talk actually anything about politics or so, In fact, he was more interested actually in about Christianity and about Jesus and so on. And I remember arguing with him about Jesus being a psychic and so on. So after that, in '87, actually, when I was arrested, when they in fact, they forced me, to have this link actually with Wah Piow on this basis of this 1981 visit actually to London. And I told them I have nothing actually political actually with him. They said no. First of all, he has sent messages to you actually through couriers, like Hon Thai, like Pauline and all that. So despite actually my denial, they still said no. Actually, you have. And so actually this whole thing actually with Wah Piow and all that you find out in the press and all that was pure fabrication. Pure fabrication. That's why for me today, if I think that one of the reasons why they want to have the ISA is because with the ISA you can fabricate. So the what happened actually was that they asked me to appear on television because they needed to have this link actually with Wah Piow. Before when I refused to go on television, but they told me, it's a key to the door, and then it's actually an educational experience for people. And then I told them, okay, what is all that about? And they said actually, you'll be interviewed by a panel of speakers. So in my stupidity, I thought actually that it was going to be a live show, So if people ask me questions, then I answer, then it's very good, But after saying yes, I had to prepare a list of about 40 questions actually in my case officer, where I had to learn all the answers by heart, And one of these answers was that I have this link with Wah Piow, and that he gave me instructions actually to build up a base for him, and with this base actually I will prepare for his eventual Singapore, and wherein when he arrived actually with his government, I will be also made a minister, a minister of religion, It's all plain bullshit and fabrication as they force you actually to say. That's why actually I found that actually was no way actually I could actually protest actually, except for that television confession, to change actually my hairstyle, to show that it's not the real Vincent Cheng speaking up there actually, Because that's the only way actually you can do. Because there's no other way actually you can really fight against this form of fabrication actually on me.
You see, Vincent's memory is very good. 25 years, still very good.
Vincent, is this the same hairstyle?
I wanted to. I thought of a way was to comb the hair backwards like Lee Kuan Yew.